Don't let staff touch the boardroom screen. The sentence landed colder than the Manhattan rain tapping against the glass walls on the 60th floor. Conversation stopped. Pens hovered above leather notebooks. Even the city lights beyond the windows seemed to pause. At the center of the room stood Victor Halstead, billionaire founder of Halstead Global, a man whose decisions moved markets before breakfast. Around him sat 12 board members in tailored suits, attorneys with silver briefcases, and investors who measured time in millions of dollars per minute. And near the door, almost invisible, stood Nia Bennett with a polished coffee tray balanced in steady hands. Black uniform. Name tag. Quiet eyes. To them, she was part of the furniture. Another worker meant to enter silently and leave unnoticed. But silence can be dangerous when it belongs to the wrong person. Tonight was supposed to be a triumph. An $8.2 billion merger. Headlines already drafted. Financial networks waiting downstairs. Traders refreshing screens across America. One signature, and Halstead Global would become the largest player in its industry. Victor loved moments like this. The spotlight. The expectation. The feeling that an entire room inhaled when he entered and exhaled when he nodded. He adjusted his cufflinks, flashed the practiced smile that had closed 100 deals, and turned toward the massive screen glowing at the front of the room. Charts climbed upward in elegant blue lines. Revenue projections soared. Risk exposure looked minimal. It was beautiful. Almost too beautiful. Nia moved quietly between chairs, refilling cups no one thanked her for. She heard everything. The whispered jokes. The arrogance disguised as confidence. The easy way powerful people spoke when they believed service workers had no ears and no minds. Biggest deal of the decade, one director murmured. By next quarter, we own the market, another replied. Nia set down a cup beside the youngest analyst, then glanced at the screen again. Her pulse changed. Not faster. Sharper. There it was. Buried inside the forecast model. A revenue assumption tied to debt that did not exist on paper. A liability shifted. Into a subsidiary shell. A number small enough to escape applause, large enough to destroy a company. She looked again. Then again. No mistake. If they signed tonight, the board would inherit hidden losses, regulatory scrutiny, and a collapse so fast it would make headlines by Friday. She stepped toward the assistant nearest the table. There's an error in the model, she said softly. He didn't even look at her. Serve the coffee. The room laughed at something else, unaware the cliff edge was inches away. Victor lifted the signing pen. Cameras at the back of the room rose. Smiles widened. Wealth leaned forward. And that was when Nia placed the tray down, took one calm step into the center of the boardroom, and spoke loud enough to cut through every heartbeat in the room. If you sign that deal, you lose everything. The laughter came instantly. Then died just as fast when she walked to the screen. Nia Bennett did not rush. That was the first thing everyone noticed. While executives whispered and attorneys exchanged nervous looks, she moved with the same calm precision she had used moments earlier to place coffee cups on polished walnut. Her hand reached for the remote beside the screen. No one stopped her. Not because they trusted her, but because confidence this quiet can feel like authority. Victor Halstead narrowed his eyes. You have 10 seconds, he said, his voice measured and sharp. Nia clicked once. The glossy projection shifted from celebratory charts to a hidden appendix buried deep inside the presentation. Rows of numbers filled the wall. Most people in the room saw confusion. She saw a confession. This debt was moved into a shell subsidiary in Delaware, she said. It lowers the visible risk ratio, but the liability still transfers after acquisition. A few board members straightened in their seats. The youngest analyst, Mason Reed, opened his laptop so fast he nearly dropped it. Nia clicked again. This projected growth assumes contracts that expire in 90 days with no renewal guarantee. If even one major client walks, your revenue forecast collapses. The room was no longer amused. It was listening. Outside the glass walls, helicopters blinked. Red above the East River skyline. Inside, the air grew thinner by the second. Evelyn Cross, chair of the board and a woman famous for never showing emotion in public, removed her glasses slowly. "How do you know this?" she asked. Nia did not look at her. She was already on the next slide. "Because whoever built this model forgot to clean the metadata." She pointed to a tiny timestamp in the corner of the spreadsheet. "Created by L. Kessler. Modified 3 times after internal audit review." Silence hit harder than any argument. Everyone knew the name. Leonard Kessler was the chief financial officer. The architect of the merger. The man who had assured investors there was no hidden exposure. Leonard forced a smile that looked expensive and fragile. "This is absurd. She is reading numbers she does not understand." Nia turned toward him for the first time. Her expression did not change. "Then explain why your internal memo estimated a $2.4 billion write-down 6 weeks ago." Mason froze mid-typing. Evelyn's head snapped toward Leonard. Victor's jaw tightened. "What memo?" he asked. Leonard opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. Nia clicked again. A scanned document appeared on the wall. "Confidential. Asset impairment scenario. Estimated loss, $2.4 billion. Signed electronically by Leonard Kessler." The boardroom did not erupt. Powerful rooms rarely do. They go quiet first. Then they become dangerous. Phones lit up under the table. Attorneys began sending messages without hiding it. One investor quietly stepped away to call his office. Another director slid the unsigned contract farther from Victor's hand as if it might burn him. Victor stared at the screen, then at Nia, then back at the man he had trusted for 8 years. "Tell me she is wrong," he said. Leonard reached for water with a shaking hand. "It is more complicated than that." Victor's voice dropped lower. "That means she is right." Rain rolled down the windows in silver lines. The city below kept moving, unaware that billions of dollars had just changed direction. Nia stepped back from the screen and folded her hands. She had not raised her voice once. She had not needed to. "Evelyn." Cross closed the merger folder and spoke the only sentence that mattered. "This meeting is suspended." Then she looked at Nia Bennett with new eyes. "And you are going to tell us exactly who you are." No one moved after Evelyn Cross spoke. In rooms built on status, silence often means the hierarchy is being rewritten in real time. The suspended merger agreement lay untouched in the center of the table, its signature line now more dangerous than blank. Victor Halstead remained standing, one hand on the back of his chair, eyes fixed on Nia Bennett as if looking at a stranger and a solution at the same time. She no longer resembled background staff. Not because her uniform had changed, but because the room had. "Start talking," Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, but the kind of calm that makes seasoned executives nervous. Nia nodded once. "I studied finance at Wharton. Graduated first in my class. I spent 4 years building valuation models for firms that charged clients 6 figures to hear what they already wanted to believe." A few heads lifted sharply. Mason Reed stopped typing and simply stared. Leonard Kessler looked at the table as though it might open and rescue him. Victor said nothing. Nia continued. 3 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's disease. Insurance denied the treatment plan we needed. I left my position, sold what I could, and took whatever work paid quickly. She glanced at the silver coffee service near the wall. That included this. The words were simple. Their weight was not. One director who had laughed earlier now could not meet her eyes. Another slowly closed his notebook, embarrassed by how confidently he had dismissed her. Power is loud when it feels secure. It becomes very quiet when it realizes it judged too fast. Rain tapped the windows in a softer rhythm now, as if even the storm had leaned in to listen. Evelyn folded her hands. And tonight? Why are you here? Because your catering manager needed an extra server, Nia replied. And because numbers do not care who reads them. Mason let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. No one else did. Victor finally stepped forward. If you knew all this, why wait until the last second? She met his gaze without flinching. I tried to warn your assistant. He told me to serve coffee. That sentence traveled across the boardroom like a mirror, reflecting everyone back at themselves. Status badges. Tailored suits. Assumptions dressed as intelligence. Leonard suddenly pushed back his chair. This is a distraction. We should focus on damage control. Evelyn turned to the attorneys. Escort Mr. Kessler to conference room B and preserve all devices. No one argued. 2 legal advisors rose immediately. Leonard looked at Victor for support and found none. The chief financial officer who had once dominated every meeting was led out without applause, without defense, without a single ally speaking his name. When the door closed, the room felt larger. Cleaner. Victor looked at the skyline, then back at Nia. You saved this company tonight. I saved your shareholders from a bad decision, she replied. There is a difference. It was not disrespect. It was accuracy. And accuracy had become the most valuable thing in the building. Evelyn slid a leather folder across the table toward the empty seat beside her. Sit down, Miss Bennett. Several directors blinked in surprise. That chair was reserved for senior advisors only. Nia did not rush to it. She looked at the seat, then at the people who had not seen her an hour ago. The city lights shimmered across the glass walls like 1,000 watching eyes. Then she stepped forward, pulled the chair back, and sat at the table where they said she did not belong. The leather chair was still warm from the executive who had occupied it an hour earlier, but the room felt entirely different now. Nia Bennett sat at the table with the same calm posture she had carried while serving coffee, hands folded, eyes steady, as 12 people recalculated everything they thought they knew. Outside, Manhattan glittered below like a circuit board. Inside, the real system had just been reset. Evelyn Cross turned the suspended merger folder toward Nia. If we walk away tonight, the market punishes us by opening bell. If we proceed, we risk collapse. So tell us what none of us saw. It was not a request. It was an admission. Nia opened the folder and scanned the numbers in seconds. Years of training returned the way truth always does when given room. Your mistake was believing this deal was growth, she said. It was fear. Several board members shifted in their seats. She continued before anyone could interrupt. Your competitors expanded last quarter. Analysts questioned your pipeline. So you chased size instead of strength. You tried to buy confidence. Mason Reed looked up from his laptop with something close to admiration. Victor Halstead remained silent, but his expression had changed. For the first time that night, he was not trying to lead the room. He was trying to understand it. Nia clicked to a blank screen and began building a new framework from memory. 3 divisions. 2 asset sales. Immediate debt reduction. A strategic partnership instead of a full acquisition. She spoke in clean, precise language, turning panic into sequence, confusion into direction. Numbers that had felt like a trap now became options. If you announce discipline instead of desperation, investors reward stability, she said. If you protect cash flow, you control the next 12 months. If you stop pretending bigger always means better, you may actually win. The room listened the way people listen when they realize expertise does not always wear a title. One director who had mocked her earlier now took notes every time she paused. Another quietly removed the merger pin from his lapel and slipped it into his pocket. Symbols lose value quickly when truth enters the room. Victor finally spoke. Why does this sound like something my own strategy team should have said weeks ago? Nia did not hesitate. Because people stop telling powerful men the truth when they learn those men only reward agreement. No one breathed for a second. Then Evelyn smiled faintly, the first genuine expression anyone had seen from her all night. Keep going, she said. And Nia did. She outlined a 90-day recovery plan, a shareholder message for morning markets, and a leadership restructure that would restore confidence before rumors could do damage. It was sharp. Practical. Uncomfortably honest. By the time she finished, the rain had stopped. Dawn was still hours away, but the city outside looked clearer. Victor stood and walked slowly to the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline he once believed he controlled. All this time, he said quietly, the smartest person in the building was carrying a coffee tray. Nia closed the folder. No, she replied. The smartest person in the building was being ignored. Evelyn rose next. Then let us correct that immediately. She slid a company access badge across the table, blank except for one line waiting to be printed. The board watched in silence as Victor turned back from the glass and picked up the badge himself. What happened in this room stays in this room, he said. What happens next changes everything. Then he looked directly at Nia Bennett. How soon can you start? Victor Halstead held the blank access badge between two fingers as if it weighed more than gold. In a room where titles had always been handed downward, this one felt different. It had been earned upward. The board waited for Nia Bennett to answer, some curious, some humbled, some already rewriting the story they would later tell about this night. She looked at the badge, then at the skyline beyond the glass, then back at the people who had not seen her until she became useful to them. I cannot start tomorrow, she said. The room stiffened. Rejection was a language few of them ever heard. Victor lowered the badge slowly. Name your number, one director said too quickly. Another added, we can restructure the offer package tonight. Nia shook her head. It is not about money. That sentence landed harder than any negotiation tactic. In rooms like this, money was usually the first answer, the second answer, and the final answer. Evelyn Cross studied her with renewed interest. Then what is it about? Nia folded her hands on the table. My mother has treatment at 7:30 every morning in Queens. I take her there. I stay through physical therapy. I cook her meals. I manage her medication schedule. If I work here, I do not become available to you by erasing my responsibilities to her. No one spoke. Not because they lacked words, but because truth spoken plainly can make expensive people feel small. Victor glanced at his watch, then removed it and set it on the table as if time itself had become less important. What do you need? He asked. Nia answered without hesitation. Flexibility. Authority tied to results, not appearances. And a seat at the table that does not disappear when the headlines move on. Mason Reed looked down, hiding a smile. He knew he was watching history in a room built to repeat itself. Evelyn leaned back. You negotiate like someone who has done this before. I negotiate like someone who has had things taken for free, Nia replied. Again, silence. But this time it was different. Not hostile. Respectful. Outside, the clouds had begun to break over the East River. Thin bands of moonlight touched the glass towers across the city. Inside, the board that once dismissed her was now adjusting to her terms. Victor picked up the badge and handed it directly to her. Senior Strategic Advisor. Custom Schedule. Full authority on the recovery plan. Immediate compensation review for all contracted service staff in this building. Several directors turned in surprise. He did not look at them. If we missed one genius because of a uniform, he said, how many others have we walked past? The question stayed in the room like smoke after a candle goes out. Nia accepted the badge but did not smile yet. One more thing, she said. Victor almost laughed. Of course there is. She looked toward the service corridor where employees entered unnoticed and exited exhausted. The people who keep this place running deserve to be seen before there is another crisis. Evelyn nodded first. Then one by one, others followed. Policies were drafted before sunrise. Contractor wages reviewed. Hiring practices reopened. Leadership interviews scheduled. It was remarkable how quickly institutions can move when discomfort reaches the top floor. As the first pale hint of dawn touched Manhattan, Nia slipped the badge into her pocket beside the same name tag they had ignored all night. Victor watched her carefully. You still have not answered my question, he said. How soon can you start? Nia walked toward the door, then looked back with the calm confidence that had changed the room. I already did. By 6:15 in the morning, the boardroom no longer looked like a place built for ego. Empty coffee cups lined the table like evidence of a sleepless reckoning. Jackets were draped over chairs. Ties loosened. Laptops still glowed with revised forecasts and emergency statements for the market open. Outside, Manhattan shifted from midnight silver to the pale blue of a city waking up. Inside, Nia Bennett stood at the front screen wearing the same service uniform, now leading the room that had once dismissed her. We have 90 minutes, she said. At 9:30, investors decide whether tonight was a stumble or a collapse. No one questioned her authority. Not anymore. She assigned tasks with clean precision. Mason Reed would coordinate revised guidance with investor relations. Legal would freeze all merger communications and prepare a governance statement. Human Resources would begin interim leadership protocols after Leonard Kessler's removal. Operations would model liquidity scenarios if the stock fell 10% at open. Every instruction was direct. Every second mattered. Victor Halstead watched from the end of the table, not as the loudest voice in the room, but as a student of the one person who had changed it. There was something unsettling about competence when it arrived from a place pride had ignored. Evelyn Cross signed 3 emergency resolutions without asking for edits. Approved, she said after each one. The directors followed faster than they ever had the night before. Fear had become humility, and humility moves quicker than arrogance. At 7:20, Nia's phone vibrated once. She glanced at the screen. Mom, ready when you are. For the first time all night, her expression softened. She gathered her notes. Victor noticed immediately. Where are you going? He asked. Queens, she said. Physical therapy starts in 10 minutes. Several board members exchanged confused looks. The market crisis. The media storm. The open bell. To them, this was the center of the universe. To Nia, it was still only one responsibility among many. Victor stepped forward. Stay. We need you here. She met his eyes calmly. I told you what matters to me. If this company only values people when it is desperate, then nothing changed tonight. The words were not angry. They were final. And because they were true, no one challenged them. Victor looked down for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his car key. My driver will take your mother to therapy every morning from now on, he said. Private transportation. No cost. Non-negotiable. Nia did not move. He continued. And the conference room across from my office is being converted into a remote command center. You can run this recovery plan from anywhere you need to be. Evelyn smiled faintly. Looks like our chief executive is finally learning to negotiate. A few tired laughs moved around the room. Nia studied Victor for a long second. People often promise generosity when they are afraid. The real test is whether they understand why it matters. Why are you doing this? She asked. Victor answered quietly. Because success built on convenience is fragile. I would rather build something stronger. The city sun rose higher, spilling gold across the glass walls. For the first time that night, Nia smiled. Small. Genuine. Enough to change the temperature of the room. She picked up her bag and headed for the door. Good, she said. Then send me the revised numbers by 8:30. She stepped into the hallway, still wearing a waitress uniform, carrying the future of a billion-dollar company in one hand and her mother's schedule in the other. Behind her, 12 executives hurried to keep up. At 8:29, Nia Bennett was standing in a small physical therapy clinic in Queens, one hand on her mother's shoulder, the other holding a tablet streaming live market data. The room smelled like fresh coffee and disinfectant. Soft morning light crossed the floor in pale squares. Around her, people focused on ordinary battles, recovery, patience, movement measured in inches instead of headlines. Yet on the screen in her hand, billions of dollars were preparing to judge a single night. Her mother, Denise Bennett, adjusted the strap on her therapy brace and looked at the numbers. Those people still bothering you? She asked with a faint smile. Nia smiled back. They are learning. Denise had always spoken that way. No bitterness. No drama. Just clear truth dressed in simple words. It was how she had raised her daughter in a world that often offered less than fairness. Across town, Halstead Global was in motion. Investor relations teams rehearsed statements. Lawyers reviewed filings line by line. Mason Reed stood outside the main conference room with two phones pressed to his ears, repeating Nia's revised guidance to analysts who suddenly sounded less confident than they had the day before. Victor Halstead, now in the same suit he had worn all night, watched the clock above the trading screen. 9:30 felt both 1 minute away and 10 years late. At 9:28, Nia joined the emergency call from a folding chair beside a rack of resistance bands. Final numbers? She asked. Mason answered first. Liquidity secured. Asset sale language ready. Press release queued. Evelyn Cross added, board approved governance reforms unanimously. Victor said nothing for a moment. Then, we are ready if you are. Nia looked at her mother beginning the first careful stretch with the therapist. Then she looked at the screen. Release the statement at the bell. Lead with discipline, not damage. Tell them we walked away from risk on purpose. There was a pause on the line. Even now, they waited for her signal. 9:30 arrived. Across Wall Street, screens flashed. Traders leaned in. Reporters refreshed feeds. The opening bell rang. Halstead Global dipped fast, down 6% in seconds. Gasps filled the conference room in Manhattan. Mason swallowed hard. Then the statement hit every terminal in America. Merger terminated. Hidden liabilities avoided. New strategic plan announced. Governance overhaul effective immediately. The stock stopped falling. Hovered. Climbed 1 point. Then 3. Then 7% above yesterday's close. In the Queen's Clinic, no one cheered because no one there was watching markets except Nia. A therapist counted reps, a child laughed in the hallway. Denise completed a difficult step and exhaled proudly. That mattered more. On the speakerphone, the boardroom erupted in stunned relief. Directors who had panicked an hour earlier now sounded reborn. Victor's voice cut through the noise. Nia, we did it. She watched her mother take another careful step between parallel bars. No, she said softly. You listened. That is different. Silence answered her first. Then Evelyn laughed quietly, the sound of someone recognizing a lesson too expensive to forget. Victor lowered his voice. There are reporters downstairs asking who saved the company. What should I tell them? Nia glanced at the tablet, then turned it face down. Tell them the truth, she said. You nearly lost it because you stopped seeing people. She ended the call, slipped the device into her bag, and moved beside her mother as she reached for the next step. Across the city, cameras waited for a hero in a corner office. But the woman who changed everything was helping someone stand. By noon, the story had escaped the building. Financial networks replayed footage of Victor Halstead stepping to the podium with no merger beside him and no easy smile to hide behind. Headlines called it a stunning reversal. Commentators praised discipline, courage, decisive leadership. They used every polished word available when markets rise and embarrassment needs better clothing. But inside Halstead Global, people knew the real headline had never reached the cameras. It was walking through a physical therapy clinic in Queens carrying a paper bag of lunch and a tablet full of unfinished work. Nia Bennett returned to Manhattan just after 1:30. This time the front entrance did not treat her like background. Security stood straighter. Receptionists greeted her by name. Employees who had never noticed the catering staff now moved aside with awkward courtesy. Respect often arrives late and overdressed. She wore the same simple coat, the same practical shoes, the same calm expression. Only the building had changed. On the executive floor, a glass office had been cleared overnight. Fresh flowers sat on the desk. New monitors lined one wall. A polished plaque read Senior Strategic Advisor. Nia looked at it for 2 seconds, then placed the plaque face down. Titles were useful. They were not the work. Mason Reed appeared at the door with 3 folders pressed to his chest. You are trending online, he said. Some people are calling you the ghost executive. Nia opened the first folder. And some people are behind schedule. Sit down. He grinned and obeyed. For the next 2 hours, she moved through problems with surgical focus. Vendor inefficiencies. Redundant consulting fees. A talent pipeline that favored polished resumes over proven skill. She asked sharper questions than anyone expected and listened longer than anyone was used to. Every answer she gave had the same quality, practical truth. Word spread fast. Employees began finding reasons to pass her office. Some wanted to thank her. Some wanted to study her. Some simply wanted to see if the woman from the boardroom was real. Victor Halstead watched the traffic from across the hall. You have become popular, he said when he stepped inside. Nia did not look up from a spreadsheet. That usually means people are avoiding their jobs. He almost laughed. Almost. Then he noticed the plaque turned face down. Do you dislike the title? She finally looked at him. I dislike symbols pretending to be progress. The sentence stayed with him. Victor had built an empire on symbols, corner offices, magazine covers, keynote stages, handshakes photographed at the right angle. Yet in less than a day, she had exposed how thin those things could be. He set a printed article on her desk. Market Hero saves Halstead Global. The article speculated about elite consulting firms, secret advisors, hidden masterminds. Not one guess came close. They still do not know who you are, he said. Nia returned the paper untouched. They do not need to. Victor studied her carefully. You really do not care about credit, do you? She closed the folder in front of her. Credit is what people ask for when they are unsure of their value. Outside the windows, afternoon light spilled across the city in bright silver lines. Phones rang. Elevators opened and closed. A company once addicted to appearances was slowly learning the harder work of substance. Victor nodded toward the hallway where employees hurried past. There is a town hall at 4. The whole company wants answers. Nia reopened the folder. Then tell them the truth. He paused at the door. And if they ask who changed this place? She did not hesitate. Tell them it was possible the moment people started listening. At 4:05, every floor of Halstead Global was watching. Screens lit up in conference rooms, break areas, reception desks, and crowded hallways where employees stood shoulder to shoulder holding untouched coffee cups. The emergency town hall had become the only thing anyone wanted to see. Victor Halstead stepped onto the stage in the main atrium without music, without applause, without the polished swagger that once arrived before him. Behind him, the company logo glowed against a wall of glass. In front of him stood hundreds of employees who had spent years learning to read his moods more carefully than his words. Today, they saw something unfamiliar. Humility. He adjusted the microphone and let the silence settle. This morning, we avoided a mistake that could have damaged this company, our clients, and every person who works here, he said. We avoided it because someone spoke the truth when the room was too proud to hear it. A ripple moved through the crowd. People leaned closer. Some already knew. Most did not. Victor continued. For too long, we measured talent by titles, offices, polish, and proximity to power. We confused visibility with value. That ends today. On the executive floor, directors exchanged glances. In the atrium, employees who had never been invited into decisions listened like people hearing oxygen for the first time. Victor turned toward the side entrance. Miss Bennett. Nia Bennett walked onto the stage in a simple navy blazer over the same plain blouse she had worn beneath her service uniform. No dramatic entrance. No triumphant smile. Just the same steady presence that had changed a boardroom before sunrise. For 1 second, the entire building went still. Then applause broke loose from every level. Loud. Long real. Nia did not wave. She waited for the room to quiet, then stepped to the microphone. Thank you, she said. But if today becomes a story about one person, then we learned nothing. The applause stopped. Now they were listening even harder. Every building has people others overlook. The assistant who notices patterns first. The janitor who sees what everyone leaves behind. The intern with better ideas than the manager. The server nobody thanks. The parent balancing 2 jobs and still showing up prepared. If you only respect people after they save you, that is not respect. That is desperation. Several employees wiped their eyes discreetly. Mason Reed stood near the front row, grinning openly. Evelyn Cross folded her arms with the expression of someone proud enough not to hide it. Nia continued. Do not wait for a crisis to recognize worth. Build places where people can speak before something breaks. Then she stepped back. No flourish. No extra line. She did not need one. The crowd rose to its feet anyway. Victor looked at her, then at the thousands of faces around him. Effective immediately, he said, we are launching open access innovation reviews, fair wage adjustments for contract staff, blind hiring pilots, and leadership accountability metrics tied to culture as well as profit. This time the applause sounded different. Hopeful. Earned. Outside, evening light poured through the glass and painted the atrium gold. A company that nearly collapsed in darkness was beginning again in full view. Later, as employees slowly returned to their desks, Victor found Nia near the elevator. You could have taken my job today, he said quietly. She pressed the button and smiled. No. I prefer changing it. The doors opened. She stepped inside, carrying no trophy, no spotlight, no need to prove anything at all. The biggest lesson from this story is simple: many people are underestimated not because they lack value, but because others lack vision. I believe talent often enters the room quietly while ego makes all the noise. What do you think matters more in real leadership, authority, or humility? And how many great people do we ignore every day because we only notice titles? Disclaimer. The stories shared on this channel are fictional and created purely for entertainment purposes, as well as to convey lessons about human behavior and interactions, regardless of race, religion, or background. promoting a life of equality and compassion. Any resemblance to real events, people, or places is purely coincidental.